All right, I'd like to call the meeting to order then. Christina, do you want to call the roll?
Yes, let me bring that up.
Thank you.
Okay, Mariel Fowler,
Here.
Dan Brew,
I'm here.
Megan Cronice,
Here.
Will Crawford,
Here.
Chris Chittum,
Here.
Mark Jamison,
Here.
Ben Tripp,
Here.
Anita McMillan,
Here.
Nathan McClung,
Here.
Dorian Allen, Liz Belcher,
Here.
Nathan Sanford, Dan Senenklar, Michael Gray. I think Michael's connecting to audio at the moment.
Yeah, I'm here.
Perfect. And our non-voting member, Kevin Jones. Okay, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Christina. We'll move on to item 2, which is the continued development of the STBG financial plan. Christina?
All right, thank you. Well, as you all know, we've been trying to create this scenario for the STBG financial plan for many months now. And at the last TPO meeting, the board requested some additional review by the TTC in light of new information that had come about following the TTC's March recommendation. So this group met earlier this month and then requested that the STBG project managers get together to talk about project schedules and see what recommendations could come out of those conversations. And so at the suggestion of Vice Chair North at the last TPO meeting, at potential of needing to have a special called meeting, we are indeed here today for this special called TTC meeting in order to provide the board with a recommendation on how to address the cost overrun requests and come up with a scenario for how to proceed with developing the financial plan for the FY22 through 27 period. So the board is meeting on Thursday, and it's the hope that this group today can come up with a recommendation. Certainly, let me admit one more person here. I see Dan Senenklar is joining. Certainly, the events of this past year with the pandemic has led to less money being available. And at the same time, we're seeing cost increases from projects for different reasons. You can see in the staff report that I provided to you yesterday, and hopefully you've had a chance to look over some of that. The board had asked for some information. So wanting to know a little bit more about why projects were experiencing cost overruns, and then also wanting to know when the project was planning to go to advertisement, when was it going to be constructed, to see if that would lend itself to any prioritization of funding. So that information is provided in your packet, and then also a few different financial tables that would show what the budget looks like if we were able to balance it, and then how some of those cost overruns might be accommodated. On Friday, I learned from Jay Guy, who's been incredibly helpful in this process, looking at project schedules, particularly for the VDOT administered projects, that there would be some flexibility in the Route 419 DDI project, which would free up money sooner and put that money in a later fiscal year. And then I also found out from him Thursday, I believe it was, that there is some money coming back from the exit. Speaking of Jay, he's coming now. Sorry to keep pausing so I can admit new people coming in. So the exit 140 project was able to return some money. So we just learned of that late last week. So I think that we have the scenario with so many little bits of information coming in over such a long period of time. It just continues to change the picture of what's possible within this financial plan. And more is possible now than maybe what we had thought at another point in this process, but even still, it's not to what everybody would like to see. So basically, one of the big outcomes of the meeting with the STBG project managers is that there's enough money to accommodate the requests within the period, and especially if we include this hypothetical year 7 FY28 funding. But some projects are going to have their money allocated as a placeholder with the hopes that the funding outlooks will improve over time, that maybe some other projects will be able to return money, and that we'll just have more money as more people start traveling again and revenues increase. So that's where you're seeing in the scenario, and this is just a starting point, the table 5 as a scenario of how the projects could be accommodated. Some project managers being willing to go ahead and put their requests in a later year as a placeholder so that the board can act on that and have that in place. And then as we're able to, we can administratively adjust allocations, just making sure that whatever those adjustments are, that it's okay with the project sponsor and anyone that might be affected by that. So I'm hoping that this body today can provide the TPO with the recommendation that they're needing in order to be able to put out for a public hearing that there will be increases going to different projects, because it sounds like that's the will of this committee, as was recommended back at the March meeting. And then also the desire of the board is to see projects moving forward and support as best the TPO can provide to the requests that have been made. So as a starting point, we can talk about table 5, which is a scenario. And if we have project managers on the line, you may be able to speak further to whether or not some of these possible adjustments in timing are possible, or if it's not acceptable. And so I'll leave it to you, Chair Tripp, to see how you want to proceed with the conversation.
Christina, can you put that document on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I'm looking for it. Okay, so this is the staff report. Is this the one you're talking about, Ben, with the table 5?
Yeah, that's the one you were just referencing, right?
This one, yeah.
Okay. Does everyone understand what we're looking at, or would it be helpful, Christina, for you to go through just kind of what we're seeing here? I just want to make sure everyone understands what we're looking at.
I can go through it a little bit. Maybe I'll go back to table 4, which was an attempt to balance the budget given the lower financial forecasts over the 6-year period, incorporating the return of funds from the Roanoke River Greenway project and the Exit 140 Park and Ride project. So that's what table 4 is, and how money was adjusted. You can see in the yellow highlights, in order to move money from what had been last approved by the board back in November in order to just balance the budget. And what's in green at the bottom is what's available to the board for allocation and what could be used to cover the requests that have been made. If you look at the bottom of this table in very small print, let's see if I can make it a little bit bigger. It says cost overruns total is $6.2 million. Total funding requested is over 9 million. So the 9 million includes like the Route 220 Super Street project that wasn't a cost overrun, or the Roanoke River Greenway East, which isn't a cost overrun, it's just putting money towards construction. So it includes those things. So 9 million in total has been requested and 6.2 is for cost overruns. This 8.9 million is what's available, including this assumed funding available in FY28. And then the 4.1 million is what's actually available in the 6-year program. Are there any questions about that?
Questions from anybody? Okay.
Okay. So then moving on from there, what was done in blue here was an attempt to at least get one project moving forward, which is the one that's going to move to construction the soonest, assuming that the board was interested in going in a construction order. So the Roanoke River Greenway Green Hill Park project is moving to construction this summer, it hopes. And so trying to find the requested funding, which is a little over $3 million. It was not available, if you can see, by just using this 2.9 that's available in previous allocations. So additional funding shifts would need to be made in order to meet their full request. And so everything that's shown in blue is what's changed from table 4. The text in red shows where the additional funding requests are being accommodated. And then the text in black in the blue cells is where adjustments have been made in order to accommodate those requests. So Roanoke River Greenway, Green Hill Park would have its funding needed to move to construction this summer. Then the next project, if you look at the construction schedules, table 1 shows the construction schedule. So the next project is Oak Grove, which is moving to construction at the end of this year. So Oak Grove, the money would be programmed not immediately because the money's not available immediately. It was hard enough to find the money available right now for the first project. So hopefully as VDOT continues to work through financial closeouts, we're anticipating money being returned from the Roanoke River Greenway Bridge Street project. The city had thought 750,000 would be returned. It's looking maybe more like 450,000, but that number can't be confirmed until VDOT's completely done with financial closeout. So as they continue to work through that, hopefully money will come in from there, which would be enough to cover Oak Grove and Gus Nix, hopefully. But that's why you're seeing money in the 6-year program for those 2 projects, but not when they need it right now. So we're just working off of placeholders right now. So those are the next 2 towards construction. Then the 4th one is the Walnut Avenue Bicycle and Pedestrian Accommodations project. So that's shown here at the top of the screen. Again, its request is fully funded in the 6-year program, but not until year 6. So some additional funding would have to be made available in order for it to have its funding when it needs it, which would be by next summer. Then let's see, the next one is the Tinker Creek Trail Extension, and then the Orange Market. And after the discussion with the project managers last week, they had agreed, because there's not enough money in the 6-year program at all to accommodate all of these requests, that those two, because they are later, they're not looking to go to construction until fiscal year 24, that they could be put as placeholders in FY 28. So we are hopeful, again, that the financial situation in the country will improve and that there will be more money in the future, or that money will be found from other projects to meet these cost overruns. Now there were, aside from the cost overruns and how they're being accommodated here, there are some additional adjustments that were made in this scenario to some projects. And we would just need to have that verified by the project managers to make sure that that's acceptable, as we next month ask the TTC to make a recommendation on this financial plan to then go to the board for action next month. So that includes the Route 419 DDI, which has a couple of blue cells there. Route 220 Super Street and Access Management. I did get to talk with Nicole last week, and she said it was fine to move some of that money over to the next fiscal year. So that's where this adjustment is taking place. Then Roanoke River Greenway East. I'm not sure that this is acceptable to the city, but in the application originally, there was $125,000 shown for right-of-way. And since that project hasn't started yet on the study piece of where that Greenway section would go, I thought that that might be an acceptable move to push the right-of-way acquisition money out a little bit in order to free that money up now, since all of the rest of the funds are in previous allocations. And I think those are the adjustments to go through. So again, this follows the TTC's recommendation in March. The only request that's not met in full is the Route 220 Super Street and Access Management. And the TTC at that back in March had said, take anything out that couldn't be fully funded out of that project. And so instead of giving them the $2,076,000, it's $2,003,701 that can be accommodated in FY 28. So that takes up all the money that's available for 7 years. We are moving into a new application cycle in the fall with the prospect of smart scale leveraging, and with any applications that would come in the fall, we would really only be looking to the new year 7, which is FY 29, for any kind of leverage money for smart scale applications if this scenario were to move forward. So I am looking for a recommendation from this body on how you would like to proceed with particularly the giving the projects that have requested money the amounts that they had requested, and having the board move through the public hearing process to allocate projects that money. Now, if we're not able to move funding up to when people are actually needing it, I will remind everybody again that several of these projects are eligible for transportation alternatives funding. That application cycle, many people were on the call last week hearing about the process that's coming up, applications this fall, and funding is available in FY 23 and 24. So that might help some projects, though I understand it is another hurdle to overcome. Are there any questions on this scenario? The plan itself won't be recommended by this body until next month, but we do need a recommendation from this body on accepting the funds returned, and then how much money would be given to the projects as to address their requests.
Thank you, Christina. And I also just want to say to everybody else, especially the project sponsors, I appreciate all the work that you guys have done in trying to move things around and be accommodating and figure this out as well as we can. I know it's kind of been a slog, but thank you. And it'll be interesting to see how the policy board feels about some of our recommendations, specifically with respect to smart scale matching. I feel like I'll go ahead and open things for discussion, but I feel like someone asked to be recognized. Who was that?
That was me, Mr. Chair, Megan Cronice.
You have the floor, Ms. Cronice.
Thank you very much. I want to thank Christina and Jay for all of the work put into this latest scenario. I think we really appreciate the additional funding for West Roanoke River Greenway so we can get moving with it. And as far as the other county projects go, I think this looks great. We're fine with the recommendations for the county project. So thank you very, very much.
You're welcome, Megan.
Thank you, Ms.
Mayor, I have
Cronice.
questions, please.
Yes, sir.
Christine, am I correct? I mean, the first project, Roanoke River Greenway, is funded essentially. But Oak Grove, Gus Nicks, and then Walnut Avenue are next in the batting order. But they are not fully funded for construction, and we are anticipating that there may be funds that come back from project closeout that may allow those to move to construction. We're making some assumptions on there. Is that correct?
So the funding is shown for Oak Grove, Gus Nicks. And you mentioned.
But there's money that's in 26 and 27 that we're hopeful would become available earlier, but we don't know that yet.
Correct. Yes.
Would it not? I mean, we're making a pretty big assumption, I think. Would it not make sense? And I mean, my point is that we have a fair amount of money either sitting there or becoming available in 22 and 23 that arguably is available for design. Would it not make sense to fund one of those projects earlier and move some of this other out so that these projects can actually move with a little more certainty?
Mr. Jameson, we would need to have a project sponsor of one of those projects make that offer.
Well, my concern is that we have, on a number of projects, we have a fair amount of money that's sitting on the table waiting for construction money that unless something happens, that construction money is not available. And my experience has been that it doesn't make a tremendous amount of sense to design a project and have it sit for 4 or 5 years waiting on construction money potentially, because then your design is stale, if you will, and there's still more work that needs to be done. So I'm just a little concerned that we have money that essentially is sitting on the table, not doing any work for us, waiting for the possibility of construction money coming back because no one wants to potentially delay the start of a project.
Hey, this is Michael. Can I speak for a second?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I kind of echo a little bit what Mark's saying. First off, I have a pretty big problem with throwing in FY28 on the end, especially anything going to the public. And I think it creates a little confusion to our board. So really what we're talking about here is FY22 to 27. And remember, we're going to be starting this discussion up again for 23 to 28 in October. So kind of going along the lines of what Mark's saying is, you know, to me, the focus should be on active projects and active projects that need something, you know, some type of action within the next, say, 12 to 18 months. And if we go back up to, what's the table that has the dates on it? Is that the table one? Table one. You know, if you look at those, you can see the number one project there is assuming that, you know, there's going to be a construction advertisement this summer and start in the fall. If you go down to number 3, construction add in June of next year. So just a little bit further than, a little bit more than a year off from now. And then Same with number 5. That'd be March of next year. And then Oak Grove is December of this year. So to me, those are the only ones we should focus on. And then all the other ones there that are also very important to make sure we keep moving, those can be addressed when we open this discussion up again in October. And by, through that discussion, we will get new numbers in, say, January, February period, and we'll know if we have additional money or if we've lost more money. So to me, we need to focus on, the projects that need something addressed pretty much right now, because the action we take right now could have an impact on those 4 projects going ahead. So to me, we could almost put the discussion off for those other projects and not show them in FY28, but I think verbally among the group here, we could easily say when we start backing up in October, these ones right here that, in that very last table 5, those ones that have funding over in 28, those could be the first topics of discussion for the development of our program next year. Because none of those need action right now. Those need action for future, because I think those were FY23 or further. So those could be addressed in our discussion next year. So to me, I would prefer to focus on those 4 that need action now. And I think what Mark was talking about was trying to figure out a way to move the funding up for Orange Market, Gus Nix, and Oak Grove by taking another project that may not be very far along or even started at this point and shift their funding out. Unfortunately, I think not that far in the past, we had a lot of money sitting around in balance entry that we could play with. Right now, if you look down there, there's nothing. So we've got to make some hard decisions, and I don't think we want to slow down any of our projects that are currently getting ready to try to go to construction. But we could delay maybe, a project that hadn't started yet a little bit. And that's just the name of the game is the way I see it. But anyway, I kind of wanted to echo a little bit of what Mark said, but those are my thoughts on this, that we should really focus on the ones that need attention now, leave off 28, but take those projects and really, like I said, as a group, agree to have those as the first topic of discussion when we start up again in October for the next 6-year program.
Thank you, Michael. So I think both of those are important points. I mean, Michael and Mark too, what do you guys sort of see that looking like here in the table? Do you want to elaborate on kind of like what could be done, or this could be that, or what?
Well, from my standpoint, if you look down the list of projects, which ones either haven't gotten started or any of those not started, I think all the Greenway projects are moving, right? The ones that have previous allocations. We have, the bus replacement programs are moving on. The Garden City project, that 200, that's already been done, right?
That's built.
Yep, that's what I thought. So, that kind of leaves, if you go down, Barnhart Creek's going on, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
So what about the Roanoke River through Explorer Park? That one has money sitting there.
That's
Where is it?
preliminary engineering. It's underway.
Okay, so what's needed for preliminary engineering there?
That phase is underway. We're in that phase. Jay would be able to say exactly what's needed when. And we're okay being flexible with that funding as long as the timeline doesn't change.
Right. So that's one that has some previous money in FY22 money. I don't know if they need 1.5 million for design to keep that going.
No.
And then you drop down to, let's see here. What's going on with International Parkway? Is anything going on with that?
Michael, we don't have anyone from Botetourt at the moment on the TTC.
That might be one to check on, because if nothing started there, that could potentially move out a little bit. And And then Ben, how about Elizabeth Greenway? What's going on with that one?
We're in PE and looking at right away.
Okay.
I think Jay Guy might be on the line. I don't know if Jay can speak to the Route 220 International Parkway project from the VDOT perspective. I'm not sure if VDOT's administering that project for Botetourt.
Hey, this is Jay. I believe we are. That was one that we looked at during our review of potential funds that could be moved around. Jumping back up to the Sport Park project, that 431,678 number is the exact PE estimate. So that's the fully funding the PE. And then there's a construction start date according to the current schedule of May of 23. So anything after that 431 number potentially could be pushed out to 23.
So if you work on down the list, the other one that stands out to me is the Riverland Road. But I don't know I don't know what's going on with that project. Is there anything going on with that one?
Luke, that's the one we're waiting on an agreement, correct?
That's correct. We're waiting for an agreement on that one.
Is it two
Okay.
projects for the city that you're waiting on agreements? Is it Riverland Road and Roanoke River Greenway East?
Correct.
Okay, and then the other 4 projects in there, they're on the out years already. So with any of those that I mentioned, is there any way to move some money out on those? Or is any of them not really going anywhere?
And Michael, you skipped Starkey.
Did I?
Starkey
Starkey?
is in PE wrapping up, heading towards right of way. So that one's moving fairly well. But if funding can be adjusted and not impact the overall schedule, that's fine. And
Starkey
Orange
Buck-
Market, pardon?
Sorry, this is Dave. Starkey Buck Mountain's another VDOT administered project that we've already reviewed, and the funding is where it needs to be right now.
We do
Okay.
have flexibility with Orange Market as well. That hasn't started yet, so that funding could be pushed out.
So with Orange Market, that's not going to be delivered with the roundabout project. It'll be done separately?
No, it has to be a separate project.
Okay. Yeah, so with that one has previous allocations. So would it be safe to say, that one, if you took the 343, that would cover the next 2 down. That would cover Gus Nix and Oak Grove to be able to pull their funding up, right?
Sure, that's fine with me.
And like I said, we're going to be discussing this again coming in October. And really, we won't know more about funding until, say, January, February period. But there's the potential that, maybe some of this money that we lost like $3 million, basically in the allocation projections. I don't know if that has the potential to come back. And if it does, it resolves some of our problems. If it doesn't, then we're just going to have this, we're going to basically have this ongoing discussion like this every year of, okay, we've spent every dollar, in our checkbook. We've got to move money around on the existing projects to figure out a way to keep them going. But anyway, I was just trying to figure out ways to make a decision now to help keep some of these going. And if moving Orange Market out a little bit might help the other 2 down there, then that might be a way to do it. Like I said, I mentioned those other ones because I didn't know their status of them and if any of the money on those could be shuffled around a little bit. So
Mark, do you
that's
feel
what,
like
that's what
that
my
would,
the whole thing was.
thank you, Michael.
I mean, that
Mark, do you
sounds
feel-
like a reasonable approach. I mean, that certainly sounds like a reasonable
Okay.
approach. I am supportive of figuring out a way to get a project moving on to construction. I'm just not a fan of designing it and then it sits for years waiting on construction money.
Yeah, agreed.
Sounds like that scenario, if the county can agree to moving Orange Market out, that's a way to get Oak Grove and Gus Nix funded. Those were the next 2 in terms of construction schedule.
Sure, that's fine.
For a question
So-
for VDOT on the smart scale projects, we do not yet know what construction year the smart scale projects are going to be in yet. Is that correct?
Marcus J, the construction schedules are still assuming the original funding from Smart Scale based on the out year allocations. However, we are seeking ways to advance those schedules without impacting the TPO's current allocations in 27. So what we're seeking is a way to deliver those projects a little bit sooner than anticipated without asking you guys to move any money in your plan.
Right, but there's still some uncertainty pending final approval of the Smart Scale allocations. We just don't.
That's true. The draft ought to be released next month. I think well, I guess it's out now, but the draft plan, and it will show all of these projects funded. But yes, until all of the public hearings are met and the board takes action, they technically will not be set in stone.
Okay.
So with those, would it be safe to say we could kind of, if we needed to make adjustments related to the actions for the Smart Scale projects, we could do that after this, or we could just, absorb it into our discussion for next year. I wouldn't touch the Smart Scale projects right now. Yeah. So when I was going down that list of projects, I missed one, the Super Street project. That's not a fully funded project, and it's not, it's not active, and it's not a fully funded project the way it is. So to me, that's a very low hanging fruit of moving that money out if we needed to, because it's in 24 and 25. I don't know that that necessarily helps any of the other ones, but there's a way to shuffle some money around. One thing to try to move from here where we are today, Christina, you mentioned wanting to try to get this to the board to get a public hearing, and that we would not make a final recommendation until next month's meeting or the month after. What is that?
No, next month's meeting would be the recommendation on the financial plan. So all of these allocations and any shifts. But today I'm looking for a recommendation from the body on total amounts to go towards each of the projects. And so some of the tweaks can continue to be figured out over the next week and a half, 2 weeks or so, until I put together the agenda packet for the May TTC meeting. And at that time, I'll need a recommendation on this financial plan.
So thank you very much for that. So for the projects that are out in 28, are those localities comfortable? The only one we have Orange Market in there as well. But anyway, are those localities comfortable of just absorbing those into our discussion next year? And basically saying amongst ourselves, those will be the first items of discussion, those projects, and leave them off this plan, because those don't necessarily need action right now. We can address those next year. And then really just focused on the 22 to 27. And if we're all comfortable, we could almost just leave what we have there, go forward with a tentative recommendation to let this go to public involvement, and then we could work out some of those numbers we were just talking about for next month's meeting. Does that make sense to anybody, or does anybody have an issue or other thoughts about that?
I like that idea, Michael. I mean, I think there's a certain amount of divide and conquer and, deal with these issues one at a time. Anybody else?
Yeah, I just want to make sure.
You can go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, in particular, Roanoke River East, that's one of them out in 28. It doesn't sound like they necessarily need, or the Tinker Creek Trail Extension, based off their schedule, they don't need action today. But, those two in particular would be, as well as the Super Street project, would be the ones that we start our discussion with, say, in October, or when we really get into that deliberation of developing the 23 to 28 plan. Those folks okay with that one?
Yes, this is Mark. I'm okay with that, but I want to to the extent that we can best ensure that those remain on the table for conversation in October, I want to do that because Tinker Creek is in a position that we can move. It is 3 phases, so that's what allows us the flexibility on that.
Yeah. I mean, like I
Michael?
said, we could make, something in our record that says those are the ones we're going to, in our minutes or whatever, we could do something that basically says that that's where we're going to start.
Michael, I'm sorry, I missed what you just said. I was doing something administrative with the meeting. So what was that recommendation that you just made?
Oh, okay. It was basically to take out FY28. And I think we could move, correct me if I'm wrong, but if we just took out FY28, could we move the scenario to the policy board to allow them to okay the public involvement? We could then continue to work on a couple of those ones that we discussed about making some tweaks to help Gus Nixon, Oak Grove move their money up. And then have the final recommendation come next month. But as part of the taking the 28 out, basically say, in our statement that, so it's in our meeting that we want to start our discussion next round with, with those being the priority ones that we talk about.
Okay, so I guess my only concern is that some of the projects, maybe like Orange Market, wouldn't have all of their funding approved in this board action at this public hearing, that any additional funds would then be required to go to another public hearing at a future time. So having the board take action on everything that this committee wants to see covered by TPO money, I would recommend it move to public hearing now. And that just gives more flexibility later on if you want to dip into FY28 somewhat.
Well, even if we go to public hearing, do we necessarily still have to recommend fiscal 20?
Well, the only way to accommodate the funding requests is to dip into FY28. Otherwise, some of these requests are not going to be met as presented.
Yeah, I get that. But
Okay.
I mean, what we need to do now is get something to the TPO so that they can open for public comment, right?
Yes.
So we're just taking public comment on those. We don't necessarily have to actually then, do anything because of that. We just need to open it for public comment. So we could recommend to go ahead, then still sort of leave that IOU in fiscal 28 in whatever we recommend. Am I understanding that?
Yeah, I think so. It's just that the board couldn't then choose to give another project more money without having to go to public hearing. And if that full amount that a project is requesting is not considered in the public hearing, the board couldn't then choose to give it more money without it having gone to public hearing.
Right. I'm trying to figure out how we could get everything that we want to have in public hearings. So you don't have to do that once, but still also do what Michael's talking about with not really approving fiscal 28 at this time. He's basically off the top.
Yeah, two different actions, certainly. One, what is the board interested in committing money to? And then the second piece being the financial plan.
So are you asking us to approve table 1 as well as table 5 minus fiscal year 28?
So the actions were written out.
Are those the red ones?
Yeah, so the TTC action is to recommend to the board accepting the return of funds from 2 projects. And then covering the project funding requests in the following priority order per the current construction schedules on 8 projects. And so if you're not interested in funding some of those, they could come off of this list. But this is what would go to public hearing, is those items in red and purple, 1 through 8.
What I was recommending was only focus on 1 through 4 and let 5, 6, 7, and 8 be the lead off to our discussion when we start working on FY 22 to 28. Because those, it isn't critical that those have money assigned to them now, new money assigned to them now, because their add dates are so far out. Whereas the top 4, those are the ones that actually need action now because their add dates are 21 or 22. So in my mind, we would take action to address 1 through 4 and at the same time agree amongst ourselves to take 5, 6, 7, and 8 and have those as the lead off to our discussion when we start the update of the next 6-year program.
It's the will of the committee.
Well, and I think that by not committing 28, that leaves us some flexibility that we then, over the next 12 to 18 months, as you discussed, Michael, we then have some more information on either the funding scenario or that gives project sponsors some more time to develop their projects. We then have an update of actual schedules and can then better allocate the 28 money. So I would be supportive of trying to fully fund 1 through 4 to try to get them moving all the way to construction. And then we're going to have this conversation again next year. Is that what you're suggesting, Michael?
Yes, it is.
This is Megan. That's fine with me.
This is Anita. I like the idea, Michael and Mark, to look at projects that are ready for construction and then have that discussion to move around for the next 12, 18 months. How we gonna make sure that, project that's already under design and ready for construction can be completed. Thank you.
Michael, that sounds like it's your idea. Would you like to make that a recommendation, a motion?
And please note that
Yeah.
there are the other 2 as well, the return of funding.
Thank you.
For the 1 or for the 2?
Was that a yes, Michael?
Yes, the recommendation stands at addressing those 4 projects with the return of the money from the other 2. Did y'all get
Does
that?
everyone understand the motion?
Yes. Second.
Okay, we've got a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second. This is
Second
Anita.
from Anita. Thank you, Anita. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none. Christina, could you call the roll?
Mariel Fowler,
Yes.
Dan Brew,
Yes.
Megan Cronice,
Yes.
Will Crawford,
Yes.
Chris Chittum,
Yes.
Mark Jamison,
Yes.
Ben Tripp,
Aye.
Anita McMillan,
Yes.
Nathan McClung,
Yes.
Liz Belcher,
Yes.
Dan Sonnenklar,
Yes.
Michael Gray.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for the conversation today, everybody. That motion will go to the board this week.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Item 2 of the agenda. I'm guessing probably not. We're ready to move on to item 3.
Yes,
I have no other business. Do you?
I do not. Thank you for everyone meeting on short notice on a special meeting day.
Well, we appreciate everything you
Thank you.
guys have done. Thanks a lot for all your hard work. Any comments by members and or citizens?
I appreciate staff and VDOT's assistance too. Thank you very much.
Same here. Thank you.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Then we are adjourned.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
You too.